Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about My Adventures with Superman, Season 1, Episode 5. Great episode. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So we're picking up in the aftermath of last episode. I mean, who knows how long it seems like it's probably been like a day or two. It's been at least a little bit of time since Lois has kind of figured out, whoa, Clark is Superman. And so now it is her trying to do everything she can to try and prove it, but she's also trying to wait for Clark to tell her. I think I kind of referenced this last episode. It kind of reminds me because I know in Smallville, that's what happened, where Lois found out about it and she waited for Clark to tell her. So she sat on a secret for a long time because it didn't come out until like the final season. Is basically like the end of season 9 going into the 10th and final season was when she found out. But either way, so it's almost kind of like that. And she's trying to kind of coax it out of him. And it's like, oh, Superman's popping up all over the place, saving the day, saving people. It's like Superman doing the Superman thing. And obviously Clark's like putting together his own murder board, investigation board, and he's connecting all the technology. And he says it looks familiar and he just doesn't know why. So previously I was thinking like, is this apocalypse technology is what I was thinking, but now I'm wondering, it's got to be Kryptonian technology then, if it's so familiar to him, because to me, like, it has to like tie into maybe when he went inside the ship in episode 2, like the little bit of memories he tapped into, that's why it clicked something, because it's like, right, he was a baby when Krypton got destroyed. So we might actually be pulling a little bit of a Smallville, because in Smallville, the whole thing is when Krypton exploded, like, it wasn't just Clark that landed on Earth. Some fragments of kryptonite, landed and created the quote-unquote meteor freaks and gave people superpowers. Well, what if instead of Kryptonian rocks and pieces of Krypton and giving people powers, it's tech? But it's like, how would it... But that becomes that thing of, well, then how would it survive? So... like I said, I was thinking apocalypse, and maybe this has something to do with like a dark side or something, but maybe it is purely like Kryptonian technology for Clark to be like, yo, it seems so familiar. To be fair, he's been having these visions about the tech and it's attacking people, so I don't know what that's about if that's the case. I don't fully know what to make of that then, if like... other than like maybe it's Kryptonian technology, I don't know how that fits in with why he's had the visions he's had though. Because the visions of like the robots attacking and stuff has been on Earth, so it still doesn't make any sense. That's still, I don't know, this still feels like such a big mystery that we don't know about. But Clark wanted Lois's help on this investigation, and he's like, yeah, it's because I care about you. And she kept trying to be like, oh, let's do something about Superman. And it's like, oh, well, maybe you and me could have a conversation and an interview with Superman at the same time, trying to coax him into it. And it's just kind of like, they've even got like a radio to listen to, like dispatch, to hear if there's any mention of the tech or whatever. And Clark doing the whole thing of like, oh, gotta go get bagels. Oh, where was I? All right, gotta get some cream cheese too. And just like Lois trying to race after him around the city while he's saving the day, trying to catch up to him and stuff. So but it's like, yeah, how you gonna beat a super speedy person to every place around the city they're going to save the day, you know? And one of the people we ran into was someone who had the tech, and it's this woman named Rory. And Rory, like her tech is a little finicky, and then all of a sudden people start getting grabbed up, and you're like, what's that about? Because they sadly start thinking it's Superman, because they're like, right, what fast, blurry person could it be other than you, right? Because that's the thing. They're never going to probably touch on it, but it does beg the question whether their heroes exist in this continuity. This might actually kind of go Superman and Lois in the regard of, if you're unaware, it's slight spoilers, but it doesn't mean something in the grand scheme of things, but it has no like necessary plot relevance. But in Superman and Lois, Superman's the only superhero on his Earth, on that Earth. Obviously, like the Arrowverse has kind of got its own continuity of like, but this show takes place on a different Earth in that, so it's its own separate continuity, despite everything. So he's the only superhero. So there's no like, even like other like non-power vigilant, like a Batman or a Green Arrow, just to kind of name a few, just because of the Arrowverse. Like, none of those exist. He's Earth's only champion and hero. So I'm curious if they're going to kind of do that. Makes sense. It's a Superman show, so why would you really bother? Because you're not setting this up to be a Justice League show. Because I know the animated Superman series and I think Batman the animated series all tied into the Justice League stuff, didn't it? I think that's all in the same universe, I think. But I don't know, I don't remember if they ever individually crossed over. Like in I don't know if like any Justice League stuff ever crossed over into Superman. Like I know like Justice League happened later, but my point is like I don't know if there was like any. Well, there was, I think, yeah, because there was like a Flash episode where like they ended up racing around the world. I believe that's an episode if I remember correctly. So there were other heroes definitely in it. Now that I'm thinking about it, I just couldn't remember. So I don't think that's something they're going to cover in this necessarily, but it wasn't until later on when Lois was like, "Oh my God, we got to stop them because she's got this powerful heat wave weapon." I was like, "Heat wave." The character's name is Rory. I was like, oh my God. I was like, that's so dope. That's Heat Wave. Once again, it's like, I have like the most like slightly above average knowledge of DC just because, I've spent the past couple years deep diving into like so many like DC movies and I mean, same thing in Marvel, but obviously in this conversation of DC movies and TV shows. So like, obviously I'm familiar with Rory / Heatwave because of the Arrowverse, being in the Flash first, but then eventually Legends of Tomorrow. Very different version of the character. I mean, even like gender swapping the character was kind of interesting. So I was like, oh dude, that's so dope. I do love that Lois, like her attempt to try and keep Superman from getting away from her. It's like, yeah, me and my friend Clark, who wants to interview you, so we're going to stay together. So she handcuffs him. It's like, well, I could easily have dealt with this at any point in time, but I had some bad guys to deal with. So I'm just going to like fling you around. There was almost like this like acrobaticness to it where it's like at one point they almost kind of do like a, not purette, but it's just like the like split and kind of like Lois is kind of balancing on one leg and she's kind of like spread out wide as they're like dodging stuff from the attacks. But he leaves her on top of the Daily Planet because for her it's like, right, I don't want you to get hurt. This could be something dangerous. And it's like, right, he doesn't know the full extent of his powers. He doesn't know what, because he's not the invincible person he typically is in most continuities. He's in a very weakened state. He hasn't fully come to his abilities. Kind of think it kind of connects to the fact is that he doesn't really know so much about himself. And then, like I said, I think it's created like a psychological lock and block on who he could fully be. So he hasn't fully awakened to his full Kryptonian abilities. He has obviously the super speed and some of the strength, but even then I think his strength is not near what it typically is. So it's kind of what I've, discussed in the past, but, in past episodes, but he went to try and find Heatwave, which leads to him. The person after him is Slade, which I like this design. I think it's I know people don't like Slade's design, but I like the suit's design, the Deathstroke design. I was like, ooh, that's kind of a sleek, neat look. It kind of reminds me of I don't know if it pulls a little bit from the Parasite design, how Parasite looked in this, but it kind of has that. Like, I like that aesthetic and design. And then, Clark's, like, obviously he's kind of outmatched because Slade is heavily enhanced, but he also has access to, it seems like all the technology that has kind of been widespread, he's acquired it, and it seems like it's made his suit more powerful with every bit of technology. I guess it's all amalgamating inside of that suit he's wearing, which is interesting because I don't think Slade's suits have ever, once again, you're going with a very different storyline and stuff, but I think his suit is, I don't think his suit's ever really been like something special. It always seems like it's just like, oh, it's just meant to be like really good armor, but in this case, it's like super like powerful tech, it seems like. So, and like they're not really there, but Amanda Waller and the person she refers to as the General in the moment, because someone had suggested this before, and I was like, that can't be right. Someone had suggested, what if that's Lois's dad? It seems like it just calling him General, because obviously General Lane, but I'm like, interesting, because like, to be fair, Sam has had animosity towards Superman. Like, they don't always get along. And that has caused, like, friction and issues. Obviously, in Superman and Lois, they're in a much better position. To be fair, that's, like, years down the road into, like, Sam and Clark's, like, relationship. Because, like, him and Lois in that continuity have been together for a very, very long time. So it seems like this is his operation, and he refers to something as 0 Day. I can only assume that's the day Clark came to Earth. Like, when he came to Earth, a whole bunch of stuff crashed with him. Kind of like I said, the parallel of the meteor freak thing. So maybe that's what Clark is remembering. Like, maybe this tech attacked people all those years ago, and maybe that's what he's remembering, even though he was a child. Because, like, General Lane is like, oh, I'm trying to protect Earth. So it's like, right. I mean, to be fair, that's what that whole operation is. Even Amanda Waller, I do bad, but it's like, I skirt the line, but it's for the greater good. I am trying to protect this, or because she's always seen like heroes, especially like someone like Superman, as kind of a threat. And the same thing for General Lane, but I'm assuming in this case, it's because he associates Superman with all, well, I don't understand why he would. Because I'm curious, like, are we going to make it so there was another Kryptonian that's been here who's done some damage and you associate Superman with him, or what? Because Clark's only been doing his outing as Superman at the beginning of this series, so why would you automatically have beef with him? So I don't know why, like, you would associate anything with him, which is going to complicate things. Because Clark's seen him face to face, so if he ever meets Lois's dad, it's going to be an issue. Because they have kind of gone out of their way not to show what he looked like when Lois is bringing up her dad. It seems like that's going to be kind of like a homecoming reveal, like that, like how that was handled. So I think we're going to get that homecoming reveal, but obviously like under different circumstances. Because it's like, yeah, the general's like, yeah, I don't want to listen to a thing you have to say. But like, once again, this 0 Day, and I love him referring to her as Mandy. I was like, oh, I've never heard Amanda Waller. It's like, she's always been Waller. And she's always been either Waller or Amanda Waller. I've never heard anyone like refer to her as like Mandy. Maybe that's so interesting. I mean, I guess that just proves like how close of a relationship they have. She's a lot more, I think, cutthroat when it comes to this stuff than General Lane is. He has his missions, but he's also like not going to put civilians in danger. Because of Deathstroke, a bridge almost collapsed, but Clark stepped in to help. And it's not like those were brownie points in General Lane's book. It's because for him, it's like, right. It actually parallels neatly because what does, like, a couple episodes ago, what did Lois say? She was like, oh, she believed Superman to be a liar because she didn't really know him that well. And so kind of her immediate distrust of him, like, oh, he doesn't really have any answers. Like, I can't really trust him. It parallels so neatly with what I strongly believe is her dad. That's so interesting, like father, like daughter in some capacities, in some rights, interestingly enough, if that ends up being the case. It just feels like it's a very, very strong possibility. If it's not her dad, I'll be super surprised, because I'm going all in being like, yeah, that's gotta be General Lane. But Clark got kind of torn up in that fight. This is probably the most, I mean, episode 1, he got pretty badly hurt, but this is probably the worst he's gotten it, I would assume. Maybe. And he's probably a little stronger than he was in episode 1, so it's probably not as bad, but still. He tried to make sure Lois was okay, but for her, it's like, here I am worrying about you, and you're still lying to me. So she does what she does. She takes that leap of faith, jumps off the building to force Clark's hand, and he reveals himself. But it's like, right, why did you lie to me? Why did you keep this from me? It's like, because you told me you thought Superman was a liar. You're going to expose all of his secrets, my secrets, to the world. But she's like, I would never do that. I did it before. I would say that before because I didn't know it was you. But if I knew Superman was you, I would never do that. And it's so sad, too, because Clark is like, oh, I want to tell Lois I like her, which Jimmy's like, yeah, it's pretty obvious. He's like, no, but like, it's kind of there, but neither one of us actually said it, and he's wanted to say it. He wants to tell her how he really feels, and that immediately gets washed away this episode, sadly. And it's actually really sad that it's come down to it. I wasn't expecting it to turn out this way, because I thought, like, okay, Lois is going to think he's Superman and try to prove it, and then ultimately gets unproven. But it's like, no, they went ahead and were like, no, she found out, and she forces his hand. Because I was suggesting last episode, like, maybe Jimmy will find out and they'll keep it a secret from Lois until he's ready to tell her. Like, I thought that might be a route they'd go, but it's like, nah. Because if they wanted to string it along, that's what they could have done. But they're like, nah, we're making it so Lois knows now, and she's like, even she was like, it's crazy to believe it, but she's like, I'm 99% sure I'm right. So, and speaking of Jimmy, this is all happening at the worst time, because for Jimmy, it's like, yo, these two are my best friends. I brought it up last episode. We were seeing the inklings of him feeling like the third wheel. And now it's like, oh, he's got like this hunting for Sasquatch thing he's going on with both Lois and Clark. But Clark's already out, and it's like, oh, okay. Oh, Lois, oh, you're busy too. So he goes into work. And lo and behold, Steve ends up dragging him into one of his things. Well, that's after he found out that someone is actively hating on his post on his Firebird post. Like, it's like some dude being like, nah, and just doing all these videos and being the most obnoxious and annoying. It's just like, I mean, that's a real thing of like, oh yeah, like here's every video you made. I'm going to make a video talking about how everything you've ever done is wrong. Nah. I mean, I don't even know if he does any constructive criticism, pointing out like, oh, this was wrong, this was wrong. Just feels too like pointed at, because it's like, oh, you're wrong about this, you're wrong about this. Even saying he's wrong about aliens. He's not wrong about aliens. Who knows? They referenced like a psychic starfish in Germany, which I was like, Starro? It can't be. That must be something else. Because it's like, right, Starro made an appearance in one of the episodes of Harley Quinn this week, and I was like, because Jimmy had referenced it in like maybe episode 1 about some psychic starfish in Germany, and it kind of came up again. I was like, honestly, I think when I hear like starfish, I'm thinking of Starro. So I don't know if that's what that's supposed to be or not. But it's like, we know at least Jimmy's right about that. I mean, who knows what else he could be right about in this world. But Steve kind of drags him along, and I love the reveal that Steve is the nah guy making all these posts. And he was kind of happy for Jimmy. He's like, oh, yo, that was you. He's like, great minds think alike. But it's like, yeah, you're basically shitting on all of my posts. And it's like, right, you dragged me out here not on a job for Perry, but you're just wanting me to help you film stuff that's going to be you further shitting on my content, But Steve is like, dude, I know who you are. You're a lone wolf. He's like, I'm not a lone wolf. I got Lois and Clark. He's like, yeah, but he's like, I know what it's like to be the outsider. It's so interesting that he's like, yeah, like I'm the one that like, people, yeah, you have your clique and everything. Because I guess that trio that we met before, Steve, Kat, and the other person, I guess they've always been a trio, and maybe just as time is going on, they've drifted apart. So for him, it's like, I see it because I am you. I was you, and I'm still you, of like the lone wolf kind of off on your own that no one really kind of clicks with, and no one, it's like, oh, you try to have like Clark and Lois like try and bail you out of this situation, but neither one of them shows up. You can't really get in contact with either of them. They're so busy doing their own thing. But for Jimmy, it's like, no. Regardless of them being busy, like Clark's doing new things and Lois is all about like Superman, but through and through, like we're best friends. It's gonna work out. It's gonna be fine. And the sad thing is you're so heartbroken because he's like ready for the Sasquatch thing, and you're like, they're not gonna show up. They're not gonna remember it because they're so caught up in their own thing right now. And for Jimmy, it's just kind of like, he was so let down. You can tell by Steve's look, like he comes off like a douchey dude, kind of being very forceful, kind of doing his own thing and kind of forcing you to kind of comply. But you could tell he kind of felt bad for Jimmy because it's like, yeah, I've been in your shoes, dude. I know what it's like to feel like the outsider in a situation. And at the point, Jimmy's just kind of like, right, who needs any of them? And he goes on the trip on his own, and seems like he gets snatched up by whatever creature's out there, whether it's an actual Sasquatch or something that's Sasquatch-esque. But it's coming at the worst time. And they even had that, the music was different at the end, and that the very last thing in the credits is that the picture of the three of them ripped into 3 separate pieces. I was like, that sucks. It's actually really heartbreaking that things have kind of come this way. You're like, hopefully it all can turn around, but I'm curious, will it be a situation where, I mean, where do Lois and Clark go from here, where it's just like, right, these are my secrets, I should be able to, I mean, to be fair, in Clark's defense, it is that thing of, he wanted to tell you in episode 4, but you were beefing with Superman. And I guess in retrospect, she might be, I don't know, she'll think like, right, I didn't really present you an opportunity. I did say all the stuff that I was so adamant about going after this story. If I'd known it was you, I would have never pushed as hard. But it's like, yeah, but how was I really supposed to know that you were going to really separate the two? She can easily separate the two of like, oh, you're Superman, and I'd never publish anything like that without your permission. But yeah, like the way she talked about Superman like that, it made him kind of think like, oh, maybe she doesn't like Superman. And I don't know. It is kind of sad. Like, I think Clark has his valid reasons, but also Lois has her valid reasons of like, right, you've lied to me time and time again. What makes it worse now, it's like, I know you're lying to me. It's a different thing of like, I didn't know you were lying to me. It's like, I don't know if that'd make things worse, but it feels like knowing now that someone's actively lying to you makes it that much worse. I mean, because Clark's like, yo, I don't know what the thing. You just jumped off the building. You could have hurt yourself, like, and doing that to force my hand. It's like, you're not waiting for me to tell you. But for her, it's like, right, I was worried about you. I didn't want you to go alone because I didn't know if you were fireproof. You don't even know you're fireproof because we don't know the full extent of your powers. And I didn't want you facing this danger alone because I was worried about you. And here I am worrying about you. And you've got the audacity to still lie to my face, you know? And they both are coming from a good place with this situation. It just kind of clashed and gotten so complicated and mangled in this moment. So I think the Jimmy stuff will probably end up being the thing that unites them again, maybe. But we'll ultimately have to wait to see where all this takes us. I'd heard from someone saying that this is only going to be 6 episodes. I thought I checked it again, not unless what I'm reading is wrong, but I was seeing places saying like there's going to be 10 episodes. Not unless they're like going to make those like because I thought the show got renewed for a second season. I heard someone else say that. So, because I was worried about the show being in the position that it's in. James Gunn is rebooting the DCU. At least Superman and Lois is getting potentially one more season because it seems like this is going to be the final season. Nothing because I haven't kept up with it since season 3 ended and like read up a little bit about, the budget reduction and like obviously the cast situation changing into what it was, what it's going to be for this 4th season. Like, obviously, like, things are going to change. Like, obviously, a lot of, like, DC TV is kind of going away. So, and at least in the form of what it is, and now where it has been for basically the past, like, over the past decade. So, I'm not sure this show could fall in that elsewhere territory, just like Teen Titans Go, and kind of be in its own thing. So, it could live on, just depending on if enough people watched it. Hopefully, enough people do, because I'm thoroughly enjoying this. I'm excited to see what they continue to do with this. But like I said, I saw something saying 6 episodes. I was reading 10, so I'm going to check on that. And if I remember to, I'll include annotations to kind of correct it. But like I said, my understanding was there was 10. So I don't think it's going to be the season finale. Like I said, not unless if there is a season 2, they're going to move the back half of this season and make it the second season. I don't know. But I'm very, very excited to see how this all develops and how this all plays out going forward. Because Rory did get away this episode, so that's going to be interesting to see what that means in the long run. Eventually, she'll probably get caught by that group, but she can't hide forever, so it's definitely going to be interesting to see what happens. And is she the last piece of tech, or is there still more tech out there? Because, I mean, who knows how much was, once again, widespread. And I didn't even think about it, but it does kind of remind me of, if you never saw Batwoman, which sadly I know a lot of people probably didn't, just because it wasn't their jam or whatever, that's perfectly fine. In season 3, they had a storyline of Batman trophies getting out and causing havoc, so it just kind of reminded me of that a little bit now that I was thinking about it. But either way, like I said, I'm excited to see what happens next. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.